Hey there, FVCC instructors. This is Charlie Katurba, your current Director of Institutional Research and a former Mathematics and Statistics professor at FVCC. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about learning outcomes and learning outcome assessment in Canvas. And today we'll focus mostly on the terminology and structure of outcomes in Canvas rather than the actual alignment and assessment process itself. More on those terms in just a second. One of the things I want to make clear in this video is that we are going to try to make outcome assessment as painless as possible. And from my perspective, one of the big pain points about outcome assessment when we were in D2L was that we didn't really understand how outcomes were structured in the LMS. And so if we all have a clear understanding of how outcomes are structured, we can implement a better assessment plan and extract better data. And once we have better data, we can apply the results of our assessment in more meaningful ways. So at the root of this, there's a terminology, there are pieces of terminology that we want to be clear on. And the terminology will help inform our understanding of the structure of outcomes in Canvas. So first and foremost, we want to make a distinction between two different types of outcomes. At the lower level, we have simple course learning outcomes. Now, course learning outcomes, as you all know or should know, are approved by curriculum committee. There's a process for them, and there's a set of outcomes for each course. The learning outcomes show up on your syllabus, and to some extent, they must align with some Montana University system standards as well. Now, at a higher level, we have institutional learning outcomes, and these are things like your gen ed outcomes, your related instruction outcomes, and your program learning outcomes. And we say that these are higher level because there are many, many different classes that assess each type of gen ed outcome. And if you, say, are in the welding program, there could be certain classes that assess the same program outcome. And now, as a quick aside, I want to remind you that you can find all of your course learning outcomes in the catalog along with your course syllabi. And here is a list of the course learning outcomes for Stat 216, Introduction to Statistics. So notice that this one says convert a given population mean and standard deviation to a z-score and obtain probabilities from a z-table. You don't need to know what that means, but remember that the first one started with convert a given mean. Now, if we go into a particular program, say the Welding and Fabrication AAS, the first thing you'll see on our catalog page is a nice little widget that describes the employment growth, but immediately after that, you'll find the program learning outcomes. So the program learning outcomes for this, there's one that says describe and demonstrate the safe use of each type of welding equipment. You could imagine having two different welding courses, each which teaches a student how to use a different type of welding equipment. You could assess this program learning outcome in each of those courses. So this program outcome is a higher level outcome than an individual course learning outcome. To lump all of the gen ed and related instruction and program learning outcomes together, I like to just simply refer to them as institutional learning outcomes because in Canvas, they all essentially will have the same structure. So these are higher level than the course learning outcomes. So as we proceed, we want to make sure that we're clear about the two different types of outcomes because they're represented by different types of objects in Canvas. Now, how are course learning outcomes represented in Canvas? So it seems a little bit redundant, but they're represented by outcome objects. Now, if I go to my Canvas shell here, this is the basic dashboard, but now I want to log into an old Stat 216 folder. So this is a master folder that I'm basically using as a sandbox. In the nav bar here, there's an outcome button. It's currently disabled and not visible to students. That's okay. But right now, if you go into your Spring 25 or your current course, your current term course, you should have an outcome group that says the department, and then the course number, and then the catalog course learning outcomes. Now, if you click this guy, you'll see a list of the actual outcome objects. And now I know that this looks a little redundant. That's a small mistake, but these are the catalog learning outcomes. And this convert a given mean and population standard, convert a population mean and standard deviation to a z-score, blah, 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 blah. That matches exactly with what's coming out of the catalog. We are pulling information from the catalog directly into Canvas for you. So all of your course learning outcomes should be in Canvas. If they're not, please reach out to me or to ID&T and we can help import those for you. Great. The important thing is that these guys here are actual learning outcome objects. The institutional outcomes, on the other hand, are represented as folders within Canvas. The nice thing about this is that a folder structure enables us to implement a hierarchy of learning outcomes because you can move the targets, i.e. the course learning outcomes, into different folders, and you can have essentially as many nested folders as you'd like. A quick aside here, you will see learning targets that duplicate the folder they are in. This is by design, and in my next video, I'm going to say a little bit more about why we want to do this. But the quick description is that it gives you a little bit more flexibility to have a folder that duplicates a learning target or a learning target that duplicates a folder. All right. Now that we have this hierarchy, this idea that there's some sort of hierarchy, let's be a little bit more specific with what this hierarchy looks like in terms of a silly but hopefully illustrative example. So imagine we have a program learning outcome, and the program that we have in mind is called Rad Skiing. And imagine that you can get an AAS in Rad Skiing. The program outcomes for Rad Skiing are to demonstrate sweet tricks, understand avalanche danger and risk mitigation, and demonstrate an appropriate helmet goggle interface. Well, say to get a degree in Rad Skiing, you needed to take Rad Skiing 101, Rad Skiing 131, and Rad Skiing 201. Each of these courses will have particular course learning outcomes, and the hope is that we can align these course learning outcomes with the program learning outcomes. So you see from my little sketch here that the Rad Skiing AAS has a natural hierarchy of institutional learning outcomes and course learning outcomes. So in Canvas, we want to be able to somehow put the course learning outcomes below the institutional learning outcomes. And when I mentioned before that the program learning outcomes are all institutional learning outcomes are folders, it's this folder structure that allows us to put the course learning outcomes below these guys. Now, all of these guys, all of the institutional learning outcomes for a particular program will live in a Rad Skiing AAS folder. Now, this outcome structure, so in Rad Skiing 101, you have one learning outcome that's landed backflip and another learning outcome that's landed a 540. These all map to one program outcome. But it could also be the case that you have an outcome, a course learning outcome that maps to this guy and this guy from a separate course, or you could have you could assess multiple program outcomes in the same course. Again, this structure can be as complicated as you want it to be. This Rad Skiing example is supposed to be a simple take to give you some idea about the structure of outcomes in Canvas. Again, these guys and above will all be folders. These guys in green down here are going to be targets. And the idea is that you want to move the targets into the appropriate folders to make the assessment process clear. Now, to wrap up today, I want to clarify one little piece of terminology, and it's the difference between alignment and mapping. So the when in the assessment world at FVCC, when we talk about alignment, what we're going to think about there is the association of an assignment or a part of an assignment to a particular course learning outcome. So alignment maps assignments to course learning outcomes. And when we talk about mapping, we will talk about mapping course learning outcomes to institutional learning outcomes. So in this example, you could imagine some class with course learning outcomes 1, 2, and 3. Assignments activity 1 and exam 1 are assess course learning outcome 1, and then exam 2 and exam 3 assess course learning outcome 2, but then course learning outcome 1 and 2 are both used to assess the gen ed math here. So really it's all 4 of these assignments in different ways end up trickling up to the gen ed math assessment here. On the other hand, you could have another program outcome where that's only assessed via course learning outcome 3, but it's using this assignment and this assignment. So again, just to be clear, alignment refers to the mapping between assignments and course learning outcomes. And I know I just used the same word, but mapping refers to the association between course learning outcomes and institutional learning outcomes. All right, thank you for your attention. Hopefully that clears up some terminology and gives you an idea of where we're going. In my next video, I'll describe how we can focus or how to implement the mapping between course learning outcomes and gen ed and program and related instruction outcomes in Canvas.